Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today.
Hello.
Hi, my name's Scott, and I'm hosting Healing for the Web of Life. We might have a few other people join us as we continue on in the meeting. So just want to talk a little bit about our purpose of holding these group journeys for healing for the web of life. One of my strong beliefs as we look around in our society and our world is that it's really important for us to obviously come back into harmony with the web of life. And at some point, we've reached the critical mass where our physical endeavors as a human race are past the point of what we can do as an individual or a group, really, or a small group in our own communities in turning things around. What we really need to do is shift consciousness and help with, on the spiritual level, shift the consciousness of our fellow men and women, our fellow humans, into one of a custodial or caretaking attitude, embracing this idea that we are one of many forms of life on the planet, one strand of the web of life, and not better, not worse, right? So we put ourselves in in an equal position with the other plants and animals and life forms that we share this planet with equal reverence for the life that flows with us, the life that flows through all things, the spirit that flows through all things. Okay, to me that is hugely important because I believe that this is the way that we come back into balance with the web of life. Just going about a little bit of history here. Shamanic cultures existed when humans were primarily foragers and hunter-gatherers, okay? And as these gatherers, as hunter-gatherers and foragers, we developed this shamanic awareness so that we could live in harmony with the web of life that was around us. This is how we survived, okay? We weren't able to survive by saying that, oh, we're the dominant apex predator when a saber-toothed tiger was chasing us, or a shark or a bear, okay? Anything like our mountain lion or a lion or a tiger on the plains of Africa or in Asia, okay? It's only with the advent of more modern times that man has gone from one relatively middling animal on the food chain to the apex of the food chain. And that's huge, right? So our perspective has changed. And in that perspective, we've lost our reverence. We've lost our reverence for the web of life. And simultaneously to that, there was a shift, right? As hunter-gatherer cultures moved around, we were predominantly in balance between the worshiping of Mother Earth and the worshiping of Father Sky. So the patriarchy and the matriarchy, the mother and father figures, were equally worshipped and equally embraced as each having a role, okay? Each part had a role within the web of life, and each was revered. Well, around a little bit, I think it was some of the 200 AD, there was a council called the Council of Nicaea, in which Constantine decided that he needed a political tool in which to control his empire, the Roman Empire, which was falling apart. And he instituted an organized religion and basically took aspects from all the different tribes and created this patriarchal organizing structure to bind the disparate tribes of his empire together. And that was a really huge moment in human history because it shifted once and really, it shifted in a large way human perception about what is right relationship and how do we stay in right relationship between the male aspects and the female aspects. And all of a sudden, from staying in balance and viewing ourselves as one part of a whole, one part of a web of life, we began to view ourselves predominantly as having dominion over all things. Okay. And so when humanity is viewed as having dominion over all things, dominion over all the plants and animals, then we lose that respect. And this is where the patriarchal attitude has come from. So out of that then grew man having dominion not only over plants and animals, but also over women. Okay, so there is a tie-in there between this attitude of patriarchy that we see, you could call it misogyny, okay, and how we treat the web of life. And so what we want to address today in our journey work is uplifting this agreement, this way of being from ourselves first, okay? Because what happens is we're so grown within this structure, we're grown within the matrix of these ingrained agreements and belief systems that it affects us even if we don't like it, right? We might all on this call cognitively say, I don't want to agree to that. I want to have respect for the web of life. But if we've been raised, as we all have, within this system from the very beginning of our infancy all the way through adulthood, there are going to be places where we have unconscious habits that reflect that. And it may not be in support of that. It may be in reaction against that. But even if we are in reaction against that, it can undercut our effectiveness, right? So just like if somebody comes up to me and I have an issue around having blue eyes, and someone, and I'm really sensitive about the fact that I have blue eyes, and somebody says, discriminates against me because of my blue eyes, I might react to that, and that undercuts my ability to effectively have a conversation with this person, okay? And it's the same thing. So we want to uplift. So this is the same thing with the concept of patriarchy. We all have places where its tentacles have affected our life and affected our ability to be fully in harmony with the web of life and step into our roles as custodians and caretakers of the web of life. So we really want to lift that up from us. And then if we're given a view, depending on how much journey work you've done before, if we're given a view of the larger picture, how this is affecting the world as a whole, then we can work on lifting this up off of the consciousness of humanity as much as is possible, okay, to help shift that in a positive way. So this is our intention for today. And I just really want to thank everybody for taking the time to be here today and joining us in this, because it's such an important thing that we can do, because we can work in the spirit world to help, okay? When it feels like in the physical world, there is no way to make a difference, in the spirit world, we can create positive change, okay? Even when logically our mind goes, no, there's no way. In the spirit world, when we're aligned with spirit, things can move in a positive way in the directions of harmony and right relationship. And before we start, I'd like to just take a moment to go around the group, and anybody who'd like to introduce yourselves, please introduce yourselves. I see a number of new faces and some beautiful familiar faces as well on this call. So I'm Scott, and I'm hosting, and this is really my passion. And I'll let whoever wants to share next go ahead. Just jump right in and unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
I will. My name is Chris Barrows. I don't know.
Thanks, Chris. Can you just tell us where you're joining us from?
Denver, Colorado.
Okay, great. And have you done any shamanic journey work before?
So I do angelic. I'm an angelic healing practitioner, and I do Reiki and crystal Reiki. And one of the was dealing with what is a shamanic practitioner, but I really wasn't sure that that's who I really wanted to necessarily learn from. So I've kind of been really trying to find someone who truly calls out to me. So kind of dabbling and doing everything on my own, but really kind of reaching out to the next stages until I find somewhere where it actually is going to resonate properly.
Yeah, great, thanks. And so you've done journey work before though, and you know how to go to the upper or lower worlds with the journey. Okay,
A little bit, yeah.
yeah, perfect. Just as long as you've done it once and met your power animal, then it's fine. I just
Okay.
want to make sure that everybody who's on the call is on the same page, and if not, then I'll take the time to, review quickly how we get there. So, thanks, Chris. Thanks for joining us. Nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. How about if we just go across my screen? Natalie, why don't you say hi and introduce yourself? Nice to see you.
Yeah, you too. Hi, Scott. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Natalie. I'm from Victoria in Australia. And I felt just really called to join the journey today. So
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. Thanks for joining us. Jim, would you like to say hi?
Hi, everybody. This is Jim Lyman. I'm calling in from Durango, Colorado. I've been somewhat interested in the shamanic work, and so I'm here learning more about it.
Great. And have you journeyed before, Jim?
I've journeyed once before. Yes.
Okay, great. So when we go about our journey and I say go to meet your power animal or go to the upper or lower worlds, you'll know what I'm discussing.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. And thanks for taking the time to be here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marta?
Hello, everyone. My name is Marta, and I'm calling from London. I've heard about this, the shamanic spirit medicine, because I was looking up for courses in Hawaii, because I was trying to go back and do it in person. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, I'm not able to go back because the borders are closed. I was really happy to see that we're doing this course through Zoom. So this morning I've done the video what you sent me, the journey.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was really, really great. However, I think I came back too fast. So I wasn't really grounded all day. I was a bit too like up in the air. So but I'm really, really happy to be here. I was looking forward to this all day.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And,
Thank you.
if that ever happens in a journey, the best thing to do is to just repeat the ending part of the drumming and bring yourself back into your body again. So do that grounding beat a couple of more times, and that will help you to ground back in.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to joining us this evening. And Rose, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, I'm Rose. I'm from Petersfield, which is pretty close to London in the south of England. I'm coming towards the end of the fundamentals of shamanism, which I've been doing online. And it's been a great resource to have at this time when we can't travel and we're stuck at home. So it's just been a really great adventure doing that course, and I'm looking forward to registering on the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Nice to see your face after emailing.
Yes.
Thanks. And how about the other Rose?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I guess I am the other Rose. Hi, Rose. Nice to see you. I think it's our first time on Zoom together. So I'm similar to the other Rose, I guess, where being in lockdown and home, and I live alone. I've so enjoyed all of this community and positivity. I'm in the advanced class now with Scott. So I just kept going and not sure if I could do it. Just kept going and going. So I'm still doing it and still learning and feeling like a total newbie. So I'm happy to be here too.
Thank you, Rose. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. And we're all still learning every day. So I always feel that myself too, that I'm always learning. Spirit is always giving us more guidance moment by moment. Yeah, thank you. And Monica?
Hi, I'm Monica. I'm from northern New Jersey in the United States. The weekend before quarantine started over here, I actually had my first experience with ayahuasca, which led me down this path of learning about shamanism and shamanic practices. And I did a shamanic new moon dance, and now I have a shamanic full moon dance. So just learning as much as I can about this awesome new world for me.
Great. Yeah, thank you for joining us today. And just a question for you, Monica. Did you happen to watch our video about how to journey to the lower or the upper worlds? Is that, or have you learned that elsewhere, how to journey to the lower or upper worlds? Does that ring a bell to you?
Yeah, I took classes at the College of Psychic Studies in London, online classes, and we did some of
Okay,
the
great.
shamanic
Yeah,
there.
so you know what I mean when I'm saying to go to the lower or upper world. Perfect.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Ronald. Nice to meet you, Monica. Hi, Ronald. Nice to see you. Wait, just unmute yourself.
Is that
There
it?
you go.
You got me. Yeah, hi, we got there eventually. How are you, Scott?
Good. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it is. The theme of today is it's interesting, but there's I think there's more going on. I got a prompt this morning, if I can just share it, that the fuel is not igniting, and what that really refers to is that in bringing back the balance of patriarchal with matriarchal, which is really the balance between divine feminine and divine masculine, the fuel to imbue and balance the divine feminine is not igniting. You know, it's going into the fireplace, but for some reason the flame isn't coming up. That's the sort of image of it. And just putting it back in context, I came across a saying, this is getting pretty heavy, but it's sort of, you know, it's relevant. I came across somebody's quote about, in 2020, I died inside, and 2021 is the same, but I'm used to it. So what our challenge is, and this today is very relevant, is to understand that we are in that phase of the shift between divine masculine and divine feminine, but it's not one versus the other. It's the integration and the balance of both of them. So what and you'll do it today as we go through the journey, it's to get the fuel of the divine feminine igniting properly. It hasn't ignited over the last 2,000 years since that Council of Trent. So we need to bring that up within each one of us and find that balance of masculine and feminine. I think that's what that the fuel is not igniting prompt this morning was all about.
Yeah, thanks for sharing it in that way. That's a nice way to look at it. And I agree that it's obviously about a balance between the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And as you're sharing that, it's like the idea of tending a fire, right? You don't just pour a bunch of fire on it and walk away. You start it small and you constantly blow on it and you nurture it. And, you know, so it's hard for the divine feminine to feel nurtured in a patriarchal world, right? And so that goes into this idea of igniting the divine feminine, but it is the balance of the two, right? Either one in a vacuum is not going to work out very well. And so, yeah, thanks for sharing that. And then just tell everybody a little bit more about yourself, where you're from.
Melbourne, Victoria, so same state as Natalie. I attended the wilderness retreat back in 2019 in September, very much following into consciousness. I think that shamanic practices are the preservation and the future of opening our awareness at a much, much higher, broader level. And, you know, journeying is absolutely critical to that.
Yeah, it
good,
is.
You know.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for mentioning that. And it is what you say about shamanic practices. 100%, they are critical because it's always been part of our, you know, the shamanic mind is our spirit mind. And that's always been part of our birthright as human beings. And it's been repressed for 2,000 plus years. And instead, there's been this organizing political patriarchal faction that has wanted to cut off individual humans' connections to Creator and also sever our grounding to Mother Earth. Because when our connection to Mother Earth is compromised, it's much easier to control a massive population, to control an empire. Okay, so when we talk about what you're referring to about opening up our consciousness, this is a consciousness that has been ingrained within humanity since the beginning of time. Okay, this is how we were able to survive before, when we were foraging for food, and we were not at the top of the food chain. Okay, we were able to survive through our spiritual awareness about this is what's good to eat. This is where I make my camp. This is, how I stay in right relationship with the web of life. This is how I pray to the various trees and the various animals that are around us. And how I stay in harmony, not just for myself, but for my grandchildren's grandchildren, for the future generations. Okay, so always with a mind towards that of not necessarily, it's not really a survival thing, but a harmony thing where we're supportive of and act as caretakers of the web of life. And that's where the expansion of consciousness comes in. Because right now we're, for the most part, the human species is in a struggle to survive, and coming from a mentality of scarcity, a mentality of need, as opposed to a mentality as a custodian and a caretaker with the trust that as I caretake the web of life, the web of life will provide for me. And that's always been, if you read the traditional mythology and legends of cultures all around the world, shamanic cultures around the world, that is a theme that is in common with all of them. That by being a caretaker of the web of life, we are supported in the web of life to thrive. Yeah. Thanks, Ronald. Thank you. And Mackenzie, would you like to introduce yourself? Nice to see you.
Yeah, so good to see you. Thank you so much for inviting me. My name's Mackenzie. I'm currently in Charlotte, North Carolina, just for a bit. But I actually got to meet Scott when I was living in Kauai. And this will be my first time journeying with you all live, but I did watch the video and listen to the video, Scott, and participate in that. So I'm really excited. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mackenzie. Thanks for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. It's a real honor to see so many beautiful faces wanting to participate in this in right alignment. So for the journey today, depending on your level of journey experience, okay, you can move to whatever level of intention that you want. Okay, so I recommend, if this is one of your first times journeying, to keep your intention kind of close in to how does the patriarchy affect me, and how can I remove this from my life and be more in harmony with the web of life. Okay, so that this can be removed from me and I can walk more as a child of the earth, as a custodian and caretaker of the earth. And then if you want to add on to that, if you have time in the journey, you can add on something to the effect of, and how can I help spread this awareness to other people? Okay, this consciousness to other people. Okay. If you've done more journey work and you're feeling a little bit more ambitious, you can look at the broader picture of the how the essence of the agreement of patriarchy is more of a global agreement afflicting humanity and the web of life as a whole, and ask for guidance about how to potentially uplift that from the web of life as a whole, or from humanity's consciousness as a whole, and anything in between that. Okay, so you can be on your personal level, you can be on the macro level, and you can be somewhere in between with your intentions. Great. Okay. who would like to share first what they were shown?
Yeah, can I share first?
Sure, go ahead,
Scott?
Ro. Yep, please.
I set my intent, continue on from what I was saying earlier. I can't find the video, I'll put that on.
There we go.
My intent was to play my part in the process. And as I journeyed, the totem animal was Mother Bear. And I came across Mother Bear awakening from hibernation into a world that's different from last year. So normally when bears hibernate, they wake up to the same world. That's not the process. We're waking up to a different world. And what we're doing, what she was explaining to me, was that we're awakening to new aspects of consciousness, inviting new streams of consciousness to find their expression as we leave the cave, and to tune into the world outside the cave using streams of conscious awareness different from those of last year, and to walk in the awareness of balance. So all that, that's sort of a summary. There's a lot more in the feelings and so on, but it's basically as we wake up from the hibernation that we've been in for 2,000 years now, that we invite and allow different streams of consciousness and different streams of awareness. And those ones come from the divine feminine, of nurturing, of caring, of passing on to our children and our future generations those things that we want for our children, not just exploitation. So it was a very profound sort of visitation to Mother Bear awakening, ready to go out into a new world.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That's a really beautiful vision. And it's so important to be able to, as you say, accept and embrace new visions from new visions, new ways of consciousness that have up to this point perhaps been oppressed or pushed to the side. And so I'm really glad that you saw Mother Bear awakening to a new world. That's a beautiful sign.
The other point is that I'm a male, I'm a man, but the integration of these energies is within the individual. Whether you're male or female really doesn't matter, but it's probably more important for the male to embrace the divine feminine and those feminine aspects of caring and so on, rather than what we've traditionally valued before we went into hibernation of power and domination and self and acquisition of material goods and all that sort of thing. You know, as a man, it's very important to acknowledge that feminine side and to integrate that and to wake up and come out of the cave as a different being to what the male being has been for the last 2,000 years.
That's right.
And we're the way showers. The people that are in this mindset are the way showers, just gently and you know, not setting the world on fire, but creating the vibrations that will emanate then out across the planet and help to tune, you know, playing our part in the web of life. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. It's I was shown something similar about being the way shower gently. So what I was shown was that this grip of the patriarchy was on the whole planet, and that it was too strong to pull it off from the top. But what could happen is each individual could be reached underneath, and then sort of like the suction would that was holding it on would dissipate. And then just like when you get the suction off on a jar, it just pops open really easily. But if the vacuum seal is still there, you can try forever and you'll never get it off. But so I was shown this as like each individual, just similar to what you're saying about it happening gently underneath, and each individual having that shift. And I also want to comment about every individual embracing both the divine masculine and the divine feminine. Yes, 100%, that's accurate. And it's not 50-50, right? Men are, you know, about 2/3, 1/3, right? Women 2/3 female, 1/3 male. Men 2/3 male, 1/3 female on average, shifts between individuals. Okay, and that way the polarity is still there, The magnetism is still there, and what you were referencing earlier before we journeyed about the combination of the fuels being able to ignite is still there. If everything is 50-50, then it becomes double weighted, and there's no ability for transference of energy between one and the other. And then the poles basically get neutralized, and it becomes flat. Okay, so there still has to be a polarity, a rhythm, a shifting of male and female energy between the two, and it's the respect of that it's actually the process of moving between and vibration between the poles of male and female that creates that beautiful alchemy, that creates that divine alchemy, rather than trying to fixate on one pole or the other pole.
Just another image there is the bear coming out of the cave. While the bear is in the cave, the snow has come and covered everything and buried everything. But it's not the bear that will shift the snow. It's the sunlight.
Yeah.
It's the light that melts the snow, ready for the bear to come out again. So if you think of it in that term, then it's the raising of the vibration across the planet that we can each do through meditation and so on. It's the raising of that vibration, the raising of the light within, that then melts the snow so we can come out of the cave without being frozen to death.
Right.
So that's how the patriarchy, we don't fight it. We allow the light to dissolve it. That's the process.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Thanks, Ronald.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Natalie, I wasn't able to read your message, so go ahead and just speak it.
Hi, thank you for the journey. I just have to head off early, so I'll get going. But
Okay.
yeah, I just wanted to thank you. It was really lovely.
Okay, thanks. Do you have anything else you want to share, or are you good?
Oh look, I had a really beautiful journey. I'm not sure. I don't really feel to share. I don't think. But I definitely resonated with everything that was just said. And I also met with Bear, which was interesting. But yeah, it was a pretty powerful journey, I think. But yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for taking the time to join us, and nice to see the Australian bears are active, at least in Victoria.
Victoria.
Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, who would like to share next what their experience was in the journey?
I'll share.
Okay, go ahead.
Mine too had a bear, which is really weird. So being a beginner, I started off in the lower world, where I started off seeing my father, and he was basically dictating my life, never giving me the chance to write it for myself. And around him and us was just all this rigidity and dense structures and hard, cold, sharp edges. And I had a longing for like softness. And then it's like I closed my eyes and woke up, and I was hugging this bear, this mama bear. And it was really soft and soothing and comfortable. But then, well, and it was like really quiet too, just quiet and stillness. But then something like roused her up, and she just like ferociously bolted, which also then like, it's like she bolted and then weirdly turned into like Kali. I know this is getting crazy, but like she started looking like Kali, like that Indian, like female destroyer, like ferocious female, like power. And then I ended up seeing, again, this is getting crazy, but like a tug of war between Democrats and Republicans in the United States, and how it's just this like push-pull between the two political parties, and how it's tearing families apart. And then that was it.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. So, yeah, I want to speak to that a little bit, because it actually ties in with some of the things that I was shown in my journey, and I'll share my journey in full later at the end. But first I'll say that in shamanic journey work, it's important to understand that the imagery that we see is symbolic. And so it's showing us, we're receiving information from spirit, and receiving information from spirit in a language that we can understand, a symbolic language. Unfortunately, because we've been so disconnected as people from our spiritual language for so many generations, that a lot of times we have a hard time learning how to understand and interpret what we're shown. So what we're always shown the truth in the journey, but sometimes we may misinterpret the imagery that we're shown. And generally, I will tell my students to journey again and ask, what does that image mean? Why was I shown this? So that each individual can begin to develop their own personal symbolic language with spirit. Because we don't grow up in a shamanic culture anymore. In traditional shamanic cultures, there was a tribal language which was shared amongst that particular clan group of, let's say, 150 people or 80 people who were living together. So if an owl showed up or a bear showed up, it had a particular meaning to that group. Okay, but another group living 2 valleys over, it might have had a completely different meaning to, because those groups never had contact with each other. And certainly groups living thousands of miles away from each other, as many of us on this call are, would have different interpretations and different meanings when a bear would show up in their journey. So now we're left with this kind of piecing back together of this language as a species, as individuals. So part of our job is to redevelop and rewrite this language, not for everybody, but for each of us individually, right? So there isn't a universal thing, oh, bear showed up, that means it means this. It means that, oh, bear was present and bear energy was present in our little group here. Okay, so Mama Bear was doing some nurturing for the web of life. Okay, so bear spirit has come to our group today. And for each individual, Bear had a separate teaching, right? So your message from Bear would be different than what Natalie received or Ronald received, or if anybody else Bear came to visit today, would be something different. And so we're developing this type of language, and it's a symbolic language. And so now where your journey ties into what I was shown is I was shown this imagery of women becoming mothers and having babies and not being able to nurture their children because of the wounds that they themselves suffered from the patriarchy. And so it was like, here's a mama who wants to who loves the baby but doesn't just know how to nurture. And then that goes down to this little boy and the little girl, and then the little boy feels resentful about not having that nurturance and takes that out in his relationships when he becomes a teenager and a young adult. And then the cycle perpetuates over time. And so as you were being shown, Mama Bear came and she was resting, and then she came up with a fury because she was so angry and upset about how she's been treated. Yeah. And then you saw the image of the families being torn apart because of different political ideologies here in America. And again, it's that push-pull, that power struggle, as opposed to working together. The struggle between, my view, not your view, as opposed to the idea of the energy moving back and forth and honoring both the male and the female aspects, the divine feminine and divine masculine aspects. So that's a really beautiful and powerful journey that you got. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, who would like to share next? Go ahead, Rose.
Well,
there are 2 Roses. I meant Rose. I meant Rose in Massachusetts.
Oh.
We can go Rose in England after.
If you want to go, Rose, you can go. Do you want to go?
No, you go, Rose.
Yeah, I forgot to say, I'm in the Boston area. So I wasn't really going to share because a lot of it was very personal and very similar to you, Monica. growing up in the rigid, I mean, my dad was a German engineer, hardcore Catholic. Do I need to say more? My mother was referred to as the wife when he spoke to other people. So I totally get that. I'm sharing because not of the personal stuff, but because of what you said, Scott, about the lack of the women being able to nurture, because when they're in that rigid structure, they're like suffocating. They don't have the ability to make those decisions to say, hey, my child needs this, that, the other, because they have to get permission. Or maybe they're on an allowance, which of that women are put on an allowance, you know, in marriage, like children. My mother was. But what I'm sharing is what you said, Scott, was today I had a conversation with a woman about how many women we know that were housewives that basically ran away. They just ran off. They just said, I can't take it. I can't deal with it. They just disappeared for weeks, months, years. So many women. And I talked to another woman and I said, she said, me too. I know a lot of women that have done that, but they kind of get pulled back in, put back in there eventually. I don't know if they have to go to therapy or whatever. And I just was shown the reasons that women leave a marriage because of that kind of a thing, like what Monica was talking about, what I experienced too, I think. And the reasons men leave a marriage are very different. And I think that speaks to what Ronald was saying, where it's out of whack. It doesn't serve the whole. Because the power dynamics are out of whack. And therefore, people don't have the ability to nurture the way they want to, the way they should. They have to dominate or be dominated. And I think it's just, as he said, I think what he said was amazing, but there has to be a sort of a balance between the energies. And so I was just kind of shown situations of that, I guess.
Yeah, and have you and were you able to see how that was tied into how we treat the web of life as well? How when we're out of balance in our relationships with each other, there's no way that we can be in balance with the web of life. Right? Yeah,
I mean, what I saw was if you're that sort of screwed up and out of whack, you can't even think about the web of life. Right. All you're doing is dealing with dysfunction.
Right. If you can't even open your heart to your wife,
well,
how can you open your heart to the plants and the planet? Right.
Well, I'm sure many people could, and they're just surviving and they don't understand.
Right, exactly. So they have to, this is essential to our healing as a race and as a planet to bring this back into balance. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, Rose. Okay, and how about Rose in England?
Hi, I journeyed to the lower world and I met with Dear and I asked, how has the patriarchy affected me? And it was about confidence to express opinion. And when my intuitions have been expressed, they were not taken seriously. And this also goes back to some personal stuff that came up in the home where I grew up with my father and my mother, who were both very controlling and in that kind of patriarchal energy. Then I asked how the patriarchal energy had worked through me. And when I was at art school, you know, going around art museums, I was looking at male work predominantly and not realizing that the female gaze had not been included in that survey of how the world is seen. So the world had been seen through the male eye, and I had accepted that as just being a given and not thought about how a female perspective might have been different. And then it took me to now and the various sort of more spiritual plant medicine groups that I've come across, and even the men that I come across now who would consider themselves to be spiritual and open to that spiritual world, they still don't have a trust in, well, either their own intuition, either they don't recognize that they have that too, but they also don't recognize the feminine intuition. So there have been times when I have said, oh, you know, I'm doing this, and someone said to me, oh, well, you've got to be careful because of, you know, that, and they're talking about, you know, the archontic control system and how it works through different things. And, you know, I've then come back out of that conversation and thought, oh, why didn't I question it? And I thought, well, I didn't question it because I knew inside myself that it was truth, and I could recognize that truth. So I had been going through a process of trusting my own intuition. But then when you share that sometimes with some men, they don't really understand it. So it felt like there was still a separation, although it's not as bad as it was when I was growing up or when I was an art student 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that, Rose. It was really, when you said that about our history and going through the museums, it really struck me. I'm like, oh, well, let me think. If I was walking through the Met or the Louvre, or and then I was like, oh yeah, who's the only female artist I can think of seeing when I was young is Georgia O'Keeffe.
Yeah.
And wow, that's right. That's really profound to say that through the gaze of men rather than through the gaze of women, like how men perceive the world rather than how women perceive the world. So really thank you for sharing that. That's was a blind spot for me. I never even realized that. That's
Yeah.
just like, it's so ingrained. And this is what I was saying, like, this is so ingrained within our way of being in the world. We are literally swimming within the matrix of this fish tank. And wow, there's another place that I was, you know, I'm aware of the patriarchy and this whole thing, but here's another place that, oh, I was unconscious of it. I didn't even see it. And now it's brought through you through this journey. And oh, wow, look at that. How our female visions brought out into the world in that way. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Marta or Jim, would you like to share?
Okay, I'm going to share. My one was very positive and very nice. I met a wolf. And this, so because I did today or earlier, so I went back, and then the wolf came, and then it brought me to a place. He said, I want to show you something. And then I walked, and then he showed me this place, which was more like a fantasy of a new world. And there was peace and love and unity. And I was just like, this is like, it's beautiful. And what can I do this to us to reach this world? And it said, just open your heart and you will, what did I say? You will see. It's just through your heart you will be able to, it will come through the message and the healing and anything that I need to bring around me or to this world. And yeah, and it was very nice. And I was just trying to ask questions, and then when the drum changed, I didn't realize. I was kind of like, am I supposed to go back? And it was just it was just really funny because I'm just like thinking it's the same rhythm, and then the wolf tells me, you have to go back, this is the different and I was like, okay. So I just like literally like I was like, okay, I'm going. So I ran back. It was really nice because it was really like, oh, I have to come back, and I just understood. And then I came back really quickly. So as soon as it was finished, I was literally up and moving, and I felt now really grounded. And I felt that this time I came back really stable. And then I also asked if I need healing, because in the first journey, he told me I need healing because I have traumas from the past, and then I asked if I need more healing, and it said no, because I've been healing you already, and I did the first journey. So for now, just focus on the heart and meditation and just getting more in tune with source and myself. And yeah, this was it.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Marta.
Thank you.
It's really beautiful. And it is so important about how we perceive through the heart. Okay. And that ties into what Rose Autumn was saying about, I just know intuitively. It's our heart is that intuitive place. I know in my heart that this is the path for me. Right. And it doesn't matter if somebody else is questioning you about that. Right. So that's that thing, what you were talking about, Rose Autumn, was that I know in my heart this is true, and then here comes somebody trying to push me off my grounding, push me off my path. So this is why we talk about spiritual grounding, about grounding our guidance from Creator that comes in through our crown, that we know in our heart is true. We have to ground that all the way through our root, through our feet, into Mother Earth. And then it doesn't matter if somebody else doesn't get it and doesn't understand, because we're grounded within that. Okay, so this is what it is. That is the connection from Father Sky to Mother Earth through us, embracing the divine masculine from Creator coming down all the way through to the divine feminine, Mother Earth, the creation, okay, the nurturing of the creation. And then we can create in the world ourselves, right? That's the feminine principle of actually being the creation. Okay, that's part of what we do as human beings. Okay, so when that channel is full, we know in our heart if this is supposed to be grounded down and acted on, or no, this is not, we need to throw that out. Okay, this is where the decisions happen, is right here in our heart. When we try to think through it, a lot of times we can get confused with our logic mind. Okay, but when our heart resonates that this is truth, and we know it from the spirit, and we can ground that, then we know that we're going to follow the right path. So, yeah. Thank you, Marta.
Thank you.
Thanks. Jim, would you like to share with us?
Sure. Yeah, I went down into the underworld, and I met with my power animal, the bear, and I asked him his name, and he said Kodiak. And I asked him while I was there if I could receive any healing energy from him at that time, and he placed his paw on my chest, and then he kind of injected me with some healing energy, and I just sat and took that in and was very appreciative. And then I asked him to, with regards to the balance in the web of life, if he had any visions or anything he wanted to show me. And he pointed me over to an overlook on the edge of a cliff that overlooked a big valley that was filled with running water and beautiful trees and birds and animals all moving around in the valley. Just to take in the beautiful landscape, and showing how that all these creatures of nature are all living in unison. And we didn't get into any imbalance with any type of patriarchal visions, but he just showed me that, and then all of a sudden it was time to come back up. So I ended up coming back up into my body, and that was my vision.
Yeah, great. Thanks
My
Jim,
journey.
for sharing that. And that's important to see where the positive aspect of it is. What does it look like when it is balanced, right?
Yeah.
Seeing, so you were shown the balance, And by being shown the balance and receiving that healing within your heart, right? So you receive the healing in your heart, and then you're shown that balance of what the world looks like when it's in balance. That's the modeling, right? That's maybe the modeling that we don't receive when we're young humans, right? But here he's saying, look, I'm going to put this modeling of what balance is inside your heart, and this is what you've been received in that healing. So it was really beautiful and really powerful. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Yes.
Another bear today. Bear is really visiting us today. Okay, so I will share what I was shown in the journey. I referenced a little bit earlier about being shown how a mother unable to nurture their child, and then because of the wounding that she had suffered and in life, and how this had thrown the whole balance off the cycle of nurturance. And then I was shown this really beautiful vision. So this was then lifted off of me, right? So what happens in my journeys is a lot of times these what I call agreements, which are unconscious things that we've agreed to, are literally lifted off of me and out of my cells, out of my being, so that it doesn't have to affect me anymore. So as that was being lifted off of me, there was wounding in my own heart that was taken out from how that's affected me in my personal family of origin lineage and in my ancestry, all the way back through generations, okay, as it's affected everyone. So I received a personal healing in that way as that was lifted from my heart. And then I was shown this like a giant needle and thread, and it going through the hearts of different people who I come in contact with, and this idea of like helping to spread this idea. And as we were doing that, the needle would come through and pull the old wounding out, and literally just pull it out, and weaving a new fabric of love and balance between the divine feminine and the divine masculine, of mutual honor and respect. And as I was shown that, I was shown that this healing and this session that we did today as a group will help me to see in people the places where they suffer from this in their heart. And so that in moment by moment in action, if I see somebody acting a certain way out of anger or whatever, I can actually see, oh, look, underneath this person has been wounded in this way, and they have more compassion for that individual in the moment. Now, that doesn't ever mean sacrificing our boundaries of what is right relationship. Okay, just because someone's acting from their wounds doesn't mean we allow them to act out of right relationship, but we can have compassion as to why they may be trying to act in that way. And through that understanding, we can hold a space where we can help to bring them back into balance rather than react ourselves. Okay, because if we have that same wounding within us, it tends to get volatile and we react backwards, and then the whole thing blows up. And that's kind of what you were talking about, Monica, in the fighting between the different political parties. The whole thing blows up in this back and forth because basically you have two wounded parties fighting with each other about the same wounds that they're unconscious of. So when we become conscious of it and we can see it and we heal that within ourselves, then we're able to hold the space as other people go through that process, because we're not as reactive to that. Okay. And so then I was given a new agreement to replace the old one. As the light was brought back into my heart, I was given a new agreement, and I'll just read it so that I make sure I get it right, because I wrote it down. And the new agreement that I received is, I help weave a new dream of the planet in which men and women nurture, tend, and care for each other, the children, and the web of life. So helping to weave a new dream. I help to weave a new dream of the planet in which men and women nurture, care, and tend for each other, the children, and the web of life. So it's like it's that thing that I was trying to allude to when Ronald was sharing at the beginning, is I was shown it was not something that could just be pulled off all at once from the planet, but rather it happens underneath. It was like this whole idea patriarchy being like stuck on top of the earth and sucking on the earth, and there's a suction, but underneath, this little new dream can be woven person by person through each person's heart. And then all of a sudden, those little arms of the patriarchy, those tentacles of the patriarchy, they start to no longer have the ability to suction on the earth, and it gets released over time. So that's what I was shown. And yeah, I really appreciate everybody being here today and being willing to take time out of your day to work in the spirit realm to help nurture the web of life and bring us back into harmony and balance as a species.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Marta. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to share before we finish? Okay, great. Thank you all. I really appreciate you being here, and I look forward to you joining us again sometime in the future.
Thank you, Scott. Wonderful session.